When we looked at it, we realised that we couldn't basically raise the funds from the government, because at the time they were putting money into period films, films that were specifically about the Australian experience, and almost inevitably all the films made in the 70s were period films. So we were sort of different at the time.
The film was put up to Hexagon, and to be honest, I didn't think it was one we should do. I thought it was too violent, I thought it was too confrontational. So my vote was no, that Hexagon not become involved in Mad Max.
We said, OK, we're going to have to raise the money, find a way of raising the money ourselves.
So we knew that we had to form a syndicate. We couldn't get 4 or 5 large people to put in the money, particularly seeing that we didn't have a track record. We'd have to spread the risk, if you like, amongst a lot of different people.
I came into it formally when I was asked whether I'd be interested in investing in it. And Byron asked me whether I knew of any friends that would be interested in investing in it. And I think George also asked his friends in Sydney. They went around and got a few doctors in Melbourne and Sydney to invest in the movie, so...
It's totally privately financed. There's probably more private finance tied up in that film than in any other in the history of the Australian film industry. And that money was raised from a syndicate of backers around the country, and they weren't interested in reading more than a 1-page synopsis. At this stage, the Victorian Film Corporation had just started, and we were lucky enough to get $120,000 from them, but at that point when their money was available, I didn't need to take it because we're actually oversubscribed on the private money, so it ended up being totally privately financed, and we didn't need to draw upon any government funds at all.
There's no way they wanted government intervention or anybody intervening. They wanted to raise the money themselves and to be a purely personal thing.
It took us 18 months to raise $350,000.
They wanted to make a film that took on, that, you know, directly tapped into the American market, and they wanted to do it as well as, or better than, the Americans did. But they had about, you know, like, you know, a tenth of the money, if that. Extraordinary when one thinks about it. Everyone at the time was kind of saying, you've got to be crazy, you know, you couldn't make this film if you didn't have $1 million, it'll be a massive compromise.
Because Mad Max was totally privately financed, I had total financial control. There wasn't any reporting. I just controlled the whole thing and had the say on all decisions that were related to finance.
We actually weren't accountable to anybody. I mean, obviously we were accountable to investors, and Byron and George were always very aware of that, but they weren't there. They, you know, they didn't want daily production reports. They didn't want cost reports as to how the spending was going. It was glorious.